India's high levels of energy consumption and its severe energy supply crunch have been key areas of concern for the government in recent times. The growing energy crisis has made the government turn its attention to the cause of renewable energy. Today, India is the fifth largest wind energy producer in the world and is emerging as a major manufacturing hub for solar power plants. As the government introduces several green policies and regulatory frameworks, the state of Karnataka has become a crucible for renewable energy technology, innovation, development and deployment. Recognizing the advantage Karnataka has over others and the opportunities it presents, Green Summit 2015 was held in Bengaluru recently. The summit saw several industry players and stalwarts discuss and deliberate what steps various state government and policymakers are taking to ensure rapid growth of renewable energy in the near future.
As a moderator, it's my duty to quickly run through the people we have here. Starting to my rightmost is Mr. Pankaj Kumar Pandey, IAS, currently Managing Director, BESCOM. Similarly, we have with us the ex-chairman of KERC, Mr. Srinivasa Murthy. To my left, we have, right here, Mr. Madhusudan Khemka. He is also the current chairman of IWTMA and also the vice chairman of Indian Wind Energy Alliance. And finally, last but not the least, we have from Sun Edison, Mr. Balaji Rangarajan, Director of Business Development. The theme for today is really enabling the framework to bring renewable energy into a mainstream of energy market. And before we proceed further, I would like Mr. Pandey to start with a quick remark on how do we really mainstream renewable energy in India and particularly in the state of Karnataka.
We have been the pioneers, in fact, in the field of electricity, and all of us take pride in having more than a century-old tradition of distributing electricity, generating and distributing electricity. And it all started with renewable, with hydel and all that. Now, if you look at the present scenario where Karnataka doesn't have anyway captive coal mines are not there, the transportation cost for coal is extremely large, and with the kind of scenario in which we are, it becomes eminently important for us to go basically for renewables. And we always, in fact, have put a lot of emphasis on wind. And we have got a big capacity of wind which is already installed. Solar, in fact, has been an area of concern. In fact, KERC Chairman Mr. Srinivasa Murthy, who is sitting beside me, I'll give a lot of credit to him to come out with a rate which basically promotes, or in fact puts a lot of greed into the mind of consumers to go for solar. So in fact, I will like to go for solar because the financial dynamics work for me, and with a rate which is 9.56 rupees, which is the highest in the country, and with the kind of sunshine which we have got in Bangalore, with the kind of people who are willing to invest in Bangalore, and therefore we are all set to have a big leap in the field of renewables, solar and wind and others, and particularly solar rooftop.
Sir, from your side, how do you see us really mainstreaming renewable energy? Clearly there's an intent, as Mr. Pandey has mentioned, and you've seen it completely from its nascent stages to where it is today. How do you really see the numbers dramatically going up? As far as the national mood is concerned, the good part is that really 20 gigawatt number is a passe now. People are no longer really questioning how do we get to 20 gigawatt. The number is moved up to 100 gigawatt, and discussions therein, however pessimist they may be, clearly is a big optimistic sign from the movement towards 20 gigawatt is concerned. So throwing some light on it would really be useful.
I must say that Karnataka is one state where renewables are more or less already mainstreamed. and they are going to be further upscaled in the coming years. Pandey mentioned about our generation starting more than 110 years ago. That was a mini hydel plant of 20,000 horsepower. I think that would still be under 25 megawatt. So even by today's definition, that was renewable. In fact, out of Karnataka's total energy consumption of about 60,000 million units supplied through our public utilities, 20% straight away comes from major hydel, which we don't today bring into the narrow definition of renewables. But more than 12%, and nearly 12% comes from renewables as defined today.
Right.
Our renewable purchase obligation is 10%, which is the highest in the country. 10% plus 0.25% of solar, which is the highest for any state in the country. And that was put in place by Karnataka Electricity Regulatory Commission years ago, and we are keeping to it. Even as the total consumption by the state is going up, the percentage is also progressively increasing. In fact, the average RPO, you see, they have 10% RPO in BESCOM, 10% in Mangalore Electricity Company, etc. And there are two companies with 7% obligation. The average obligation comes to, weighted average comes to about 9%. But their actual procurement is 11.8% last year. So one of the few states where we have already gone far ahead of the highest renewable purchase obligation. That is the kind of regulatory support renewables have received in Karnataka.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, what's your thought on that? Adequate could be better?
I think on behalf of industry, first of all, I must congratulate Government of Karnataka for having very proactive approach towards renewable. Sir, this is absolutely without doubt. Karnataka is one state where we have seen very stable market as manufacturers, stable policies, and lot of encouragement. We always debate whenever we meet in different forums in different states and even at the country level that unless renewable becomes part of energy policy of country, we cannot achieve what we want to achieve. But Karnataka is one state where, as you explained, it is already part of energy policy of the state. And very well laid down systems, less hassles, and fortunately, as far as wind is concerned, it is fairly blessed state towards having good wind velocities in many parts of the state. Having achieved this so far, sir, I think you have shown the way and we have to move forward. We are seeing when I say that it has been a stable market, but now we need to grow. Karnataka has been closer to 300, 350 megawatt market year on year in last few years. And as we all know, the potential is much more higher. There are new solutions today, new solutions in terms of better technologies, which can give better efficiency at lower wind speeds, and also solutions like wind solar hybrid systems, and many more such things, very grid-friendly machines. So I think, sir, a time has come. We have been running at a particular speed. Now we have to increase our pace.
Would be very keen to hear on the solar side, where do you see the picture?
Well, before I comment something on solar, I would like to take you the backdrop of the wind at the macro level. If you look at the progressive, I would like to talk about inclusive growth to bringing the renewables in the mainstream, which needs a very holistic approach. If you look at the progress of the wind since 2003 to 2015, the annual component growth rate is about 23.3%. And in the last 2 years, it has just grown about 11% average. This is partly because the economy is not doing so well. If you look at this 23% average, has actually catapulted because of the excellent performance in 2005, 6, 6, 7, where the industry grew at 50%, and 2 years later it also grown about 30%. Overall, if you look at it, it's just 23%. And today we have about 24,000 megawatts roughly the wind side, which is largest among the renewables players. To take it to a 100,000 megawatt stage, I think we need a paradigm shift in terms of our thinking, which is to be holistic. The cost of energy generation in India from renewables is the highest, it's about 18-20% higher than the cost of generation of electricity renewable energy outside India. This is partly because of high rate of borrowing. Renewable energy cannot sustain the high rate of borrowing at 12.5%, 13%. That's very important because the private equity players or investors, they expect an obscene kind of returns, but today they have become realistically to a stabilized rate of about 16-17%. Even then, that's quite high. So to make it very inclusive, holistic approach for being the mainstream, you need three important things. A, you need a good competitive tariff system, which can be in terms of feed-in tariff, which the states like Madhya Pradesh has demonstrated, Rajasthan has demonstrated, Maharashtra demonstrated. You need a consistency in the policy. By and large, we find that much of the industrial policy has a kind of a paralysis as the day it is introduced. So you need to remove that shade to bring a clarity to the investors into India. It's very important. And third, you need a very good evacuation connectivity approach. This is again because I'm telling you, a state like Tamil Nadu, for the last 2 years, we've been suffering a lot. That the connectivity and evacuation is because of various other reasons as well. If these three can be standardized, you really have a large opportunity for scaling up.
Just actually borrowing from your point in terms of connectivity, sir, if I could ask you, net metering, from a net metering standpoint, how do we stand? And I think a question that always keeps coming up is, at the end of the day, there is on one side, we are really focused on the fact that we need to bring in that much supply onto the grid. But how do you see the grid challenges being managed in the short and really more importantly in future? Because in terms of a planning, clearly the numbers suddenly are really, really big in terms of what the aspirations are. But relatively, while we keep hearing about the green corridor, on ground, would love to hear what's really the view being taken.
In fact, obviously the renewables come with a baggage of a greater challenge on the grid stability, on the grid maintenance. The job of the dispatcher sitting at the state load dispatch center becomes extremely tough. And with the kind of growth which we are anticipating, it will become even more tougher. So from the Karnataka Power Transmission Corporation Limited, KPTCL, which is our transmission company, and with PGCIL, in fact, this green corridor recently, Honorable Prime Minister also did, in fact, had a meeting through video conference. In fact, it was yesterday only. And we have, in fact, got an approval from Central Electricity Authority for a green corridor to the extent of 906 crores. And KFW has come forward to fund it, to give a soft loan to the extent of 40%. 40% will come from MNRE and 20% has to be pitched by the KPTCL. And apart from this, in fact, how will the rooftop, the wind will affect the grid stability? How will we are going to compensate that? There's a lot of thinking going on in the transmission, the energy sector. Studies have, in fact, have been given. And we are confident that we'll be able to absorb the renewables, but again, a lot of infrastructure work needs to be done for that. And the entire state is geared up to do that.
Sir, would love to hear from you, and specifically also if you could throw some light on really how do we increase use of solar pumps as far as the agricultural sector is concerned.
Two issues then. One, the attraction that the IT companies and other corporates seem to have for green energy. The other one is, of course, how to take care of the requirements of agriculture sector using renewables. The first one, I have come across many company executives telling us that they would like to increase their consumption of renewable energy because they have a lot of commitment, obviously, for the environment. And that's a very enlightened way of thinking on the part of corporate managements. But one catch is that they would like all this green energy to be cheaper than conventional energy. So therefore, sometimes as chairman of the Electricity Regulatory Commission, I have wondered whether they are looking at the color or the price tag attached to the energy. I would like to believe that they really want the color and they are not too much worried about the price part of it. Particularly because Mr. Pankaj Pandey is offering green energy separately purchased for them at a small premium over the tariff. I mean, if you are a consumer paying 5 rupees tariff, with a small premium of maybe a few paise, he is ready to give you green energy purchased exclusively for your sake. So, if you are very fond of green energy, very committed to that, and there are plenty of opportunities for getting that. But if you say green energy must be at least 50 paise lower than the other kind of untouchable energy, well then you are asking for, let us say, organically grown vegetables cheaper than the regular vegetables, which is not feasible. Therefore, the corporate consumers must probably need to do a little bit of rethink on their policy towards green energy. To say that whatever be the economics you give pumps, on a pilot basis, yes. I think they have already committed to 1,000 irrigation pump sets or something like that in Karnataka on a pilot basis. Whatever be the cost, pilots need to be done.
Absolutely. Any
in fact, to add to what Sir has told, in fact, we have got one pilot which is called Surya Raita scheme. So the idea is that an entire feeder, because we have done the feeder segregation in almost 2/3 of our state under a scheme called Nirantar Jyoti Yojana. So the rural feeders are now segregated into agri feeders and non-agri feeders in 2/3 of the state almost. So we have selected an agri feeder which basically contains all your irrigation pump sets. And this entire feeder is, we are going to have the solar generation individually on each field. And solar powered pump sets will be there, and whenever they are not running the pump set, the solar energy generated will be pumped into the grid. And it works out that way in the sense that the farmer obviously doesn't use the pumps for the entire year, 365 days. So probably he may be using it for 150, 160 or 200 days. So rest of the time he pumps the energy into the grid. We also have a component built in the scheme where the farmer gets some incentive, say at the rate of 50 paise to 1 rupee for pumping the extra energy into the grid. So it basically motivates him or her to save energy or save water. So he saves energy, saves water, saves soil. So all these three things, and probably the biggest attraction to the farmer is that he can do the irrigation in the daytime.
Yeah. To add to the point is, by and large, if you look at it, the renewable energy game is actually, it's the capex game, not IRR game. The lower the capex, the higher the generation, the lower the cost of generation of power. If this equation is missing somewhere, then the ultimate sufferer is the person who's going to receive the power. It is proven fact that the lower the capex only gives you a better IRR in renewable energy projects anywhere in the world. That has to be understood very clearly. That's one of the reasons even the banks today, by and large, does not simply accept the fact that the capex per megawatt or per turbine is, or solar per megawatt has been kept at a very high level. They don't accept that because whilst the technology development has been considerably increased, but the efficiency factor still talk about in firm power. Renewable energy still cannot be called as firm power. So in that backdrop, I think if the capex has been kept low, the efficiency, the higher level, the cost of generation of power will be low. So the ultimate receiver.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I fully agree with Balaji, but at the same time, capex is end result of the volume. We have seen in our neighboring markets where the volumes are very high, and hopefully the capex of renewable energy projects is lower. Interest rate plays equal role. So when there is a 10,000 megawatt manufacturing capacity in wind sector in India and we have a market size of 2,500 megawatt, there is a big gap. At the same time, in global markets, the standard interest rates are hovering between 4 to 7%. Against that, in India, we pay closer to 12 to 13%. So I think the issue need to be addressed from all angles. If we look at the hidden subsidies in power sector, we already have a grid parity. And as we are discussing on this dais, already 550 is the solar bid, whereas power delivered to a rural feeder is already more than 6 rupees. So there is already a grid parity. I think with this mindset that we grow the market size to a level by which automatically capex also comes down. See, the penetration of renewable has to be increased from the current levels of 10% to 30%, 20%, 30% in a phased manner. And we have to make it viable through qualitative and quantitative approach rather than only qualitative approach. This is important, and this has to be part of our energy policy. Having achieved 10 megawatt is absolutely a big achievement, no doubt, but then now we have to look forward to achieve 30 megawatt of contribution of renewable in our grid system. And many countries are doing, many maybe small, but the grid size and the grid network is not small in those countries. So I think volumes is important to make it viable, and automatically for that you have to have higher penetration of renewables.
Thank you so much. We have run out of time. Just on the wind side, I guess, would report, I guess the main piece is on the land conversion, if that could be looked at. I'm assuming that's, therefore there was no other questions. They're keeping it more focused. Thank you very much for such an open, lively, frank, honest discussion. Greatly appreciate. It's been my pleasure to moderate this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Fkcci is a 100-year-old organization started by Sir N. Visvesvaraya, the legendary statesman and engineer, the top class one which India has ever produced. Now, this gentleman had said, industrialize or perish. And now we have 2,700 members, mostly from industry and also from trade and services. And all these people are serviced by Fkcci in terms of sorting out their day-to-day problems, in terms of bringing policy guidelines to the government so that they become industry friendly. More industries come up in Karnataka.
Green Summit 2015 is the third edition of Green Summit. So we have started with a trade show, and every year we are trying to add to promote renewable energy in the state. What all activity required, we keep on adding that. So this year we have a CEO conclave, secretary conclave, and we have a for the poster session for the new innovations and a grant challenge for the startups. And this year we also started a new one more activity, marketplace for the renewable energy sector, which can create platform for all the product manufacturers, designers, developers, and all the stakeholders who can exchange their businesses.